I'm Annie Duke, and in this lesson, we're going to talk about flopping one of the best hands in poker, a full house. Now, the great thing about flopping a boat is that there are just very few hands that you should be scared of since you're already beating all of the possible flushes and straights. The bad thing about flopping the full house, and believe me, there is a little bit of a bad thing, is that it can take some work to get paid off with your monster hand. In the previous lesson, we talked about how the board texture is very important to how you play your hand when you flop a straight or a flush. The same thing is true when you flop a full house, but not for the same reason. When you flop a straight or a small flush, you are worried about boards that may counterfeit your hand by improving your opponent's hand. While this can be a problem if you flopped a small full house and are concerned about an opponent making, say, a bigger boat, you generally want your opponent's hand to improve in this spot. If you were the pre-flop raiser and the action checks to you, you're going to want to make a normal c-bet, especially if you think your opponent may have something like a flush draw. The trick here is to size your bet so that your opponent thinks he has a mathematical edge to chase his draw. That generally means you don't want to be betting more than 50% of the pot in this spot. If your opponent hasn't made his hand on the turn, you should put in another small bet of no more than 50% of the pot to try to keep him in, try to keep him chasing. Now, things get harder when the board isn't textured because that means your opponent is unlikely to have a very good hand and will be reluctant to put any money into the pot. Unless your opponent is hyper aggressive and likes to punish c-bets, your best play may be to just check the flop behind your opponent, even if you were the original pre-flop raiser. By checking here, you're hoping your opponent will improve their hand on the turn and possibly even lead out into you. Even if they don't bet the turn, you can try to get them to put some money into the pot by making a smallish bet. If you are facing a very aggressive opponent, you should make your standard c-bet and hope that they try to take the pot away with a check raise. If your opponent raised pre-flop and then checked to you on the flop, you're in a great spot to bet because it's very likely that they've hit something like two pair or a set or a big flush draw and are looking to check raise against what they think is a weaker hand, but now you've got the goods for them. Finally, if your opponent raised pre-flop and then makes a standard continuation bet, you shouldn't really do anything besides flat call because you don't want to scare them off of their hand, especially if you think they're on a flush draw.